The entire establishment of religious and military power cannot make Jesus speak. A maid by a fire makes Peter curse and weep.
Wow. Yeah, that contrast is it's staggering.
Right. And, what we are exploring today is really going to completely shatter the cultural image you might have of, well, the most famous betrayal in human history.
Because we usually picture it as this, spontaneous crime of passion.
Exactly. Just Judas suddenly grabbing a bag of coins in a moment of pure, unchecked greed. But when you look at the actual historical sources, that image dissolves into something far more chilling.
It really does. It wasn't a sudden crime at all.
No, it was a calculated, covert intelligence operation. I mean, the religious elites of Jerusalem were sitting on this massive political powder keg, and they desperately needed a mole.
Right, someone on the inside.
Exactly, someone who could provide the exact timing and access to pull off a black ops arrest without triggering a massive Roman military crackdown.
They needed surgical precision, and, well, that required insider intelligence.
But before we step into the darkness of that garden and the shadowy arrest, we have to ask, what sets this entire countdown in motion?
That's the real mystery here.
Yeah, how does a simple dinner in Bethany, featuring an unnamed woman and an imported jar of oil, light the fuse for this explosive night? And how does an entire high-stakes covert operation hinge on a man carrying a jug of water?
Well, to understand that, we first have to look at the immediate economic shockwave that precedes the betrayal.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So we are situated in Bethany.
Mm-hmm.
This is a village located just under 2 miles east of Jerusalem, sitting right there on the far slope of the Mount of Olives.
Which is an important geographic detail.
Very important.
Yeah.
It's crucial because it puts this dinner just outside the Roman-controlled city walls of Jerusalem. So Jesus is at a dinner hosted by a man identified as Simon the leper.
I always try to picture the scene. It's, an intimate gathering, presumably just the inner circle and the host. And right in the middle of this dinner, an unnamed woman approaches Jesus, breaks open an alabaster jar, and pours oil over his head. Which, on the surface, that might just sound like an ancient cultural hospitality practice. But the sources are incredibly specific about what is actually in this jar.
Yes, and we really have to emphasize the sheer material value of what she is holding. The text specifies it is a jar of nard, or spikenard.
And what exactly is that?
It's an aromatic resin.
Uh-huh.
But the key is that it's not native to the Mediterranean. It is native to the Himalayan region of Nepal and India.
Wait, so this had to travel, how did it even get there?
Overland, via incredibly arduous ancient trade routes.
So across deserts and mountains.
Exactly, and passing through countless merchants. It would accumulate this immense markup at every single border and checkpoint before it ever reached Judea.
Wow.
Yeah, so because of that brutal supply chain, the text explicitly notes it was valued at 300 denarii.
Which is just a staggering amount of wealth held in one small jar.
It really is.
Yeah.
And just to be historically accurate here, we must always use the term denarii in this Roman context. You might sometimes hear people mistakenly use the word dinar.
Oh, right.
But that is a much later Arabized term. It simply does not belong in the 1st century. We're talking about Roman denarii here.
Okay, got it.
And at that time, 300 denarii represented roughly an entire year's wages for a typical day laborer.
So to put that in a modern perspective, it would be like someone taking an entire year's salary, say $50,000 or $60,000, and liquidating it into a single highly concentrated luxury item.
Right.
And then literally pouring it over someone's head in a matter of seconds. The smell alone must have been overpowering.
Oh, absolutely.
But you can also imagine the absolute shock just sucking the oxygen out of the room. When you see wealth destroyed like that, people react.
They certainly did. The sources tell us the disciples were furious at the expense. They were arguing it could have been sold and the money given to the poor.
But Jesus pushes back.
He completely shuts down their outrage. In Mark 14.9, he defends the woman, calling her action a beautiful thing and framing it as an anointing in preparation for his burial.
He's basically saying she's the only one in the room who actually understands what is about to happen to him.
Yes. And he takes it a step further. He guarantees that wherever his message is preached throughout the whole world, this unnamed woman's actions will be spoken of as a memorial to her.
Wow.
We really have to pause and recognize the profound cultural inversion taking place at that table.
Because of the honor and shame culture they lived in, right?
Exactly. 1st century Middle Eastern culture was deeply obsessed with male lineage, public reputation, status, and naming.
Yeah.
Yet here, Jesus elevates the legacy of an unnamed woman above every named, prominent male disciple sitting there.
That's incredible.
Her fame will outshine theirs. She is guaranteed a global memorial, while they're essentially told they missed the point entirely.
Now, I have to ask about Judas here, because you have this massive display of wealth being wasted, at least in his eyes, and he is publicly rebuked along with the others. Some people assume this financial waste is what triggered him to snap, but if we look at the financial aspect, wait, selling someone out to the authorities usually involves a massive payday, right?
Usually, yes.
But the common cultural knowledge that he did it for a relative pittance. If he's purely motivated by unchecked greed, why sell out his leader for what amounts to a fraction of the cost of that oil? Is there, like, something else driving him?
That is a brilliant question, and it really speaks to the complexity of his motivation.
Because it can't just be about the money.
While some historical analyses focus almost strictly on the tactical value of Judas's betrayal, they argue that he was purely a logistical asset who was disillusioned with the movement.
Okay.
However, we have to look at the source text. Mark 14.11 explicitly states that when he went to the chief priests, they promised to give him money.
Ah, so it is right there.
It is. So while his real operational value to the priests was his ability to deliver Jesus quietly, the monetary motive is right there in the text. It cannot be dismissed.
It sounds like the money was the sweetener, but his true currency was his inside knowledge. He could give them access.
Exactly.
But why were the chief priests so desperate for that specific kind of access? If they wanted to arrest him, why not just send guards to grab him in the middle of the day while he's teaching?
Because of the terrifying political math of the Passover festival, if they tried a daylight arrest, they risked losing absolutely everything.
Walk us through that. What did Jerusalem actually look like during Passover? I imagine it wasn't just a quiet religious observance.
It was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Jerusalem during Passover was a massive, volatile, nationalist powder keg.
Just packed with people.
The city's normal population would swell by hundreds of thousands of pilgrims from all over the known world. The streets were choked with people, animals, noise, and you have to remember the psychological environment. These hundreds of thousands of people are gathered specifically to celebrate their historical liberation from foreign oppression in Egypt.
Oh, wow. And they are celebrating that past liberation while currently living under the very real, very heavy boot of foreign oppression from Rome.
Yes.
That has to make the Romans incredibly nervous.
The Romans were highly anxious. To maintain control during these festivals, they routinely reinforced their military presence.
Makes sense.
Specifically, they garrisoned extra troops at the Antonia Fortress. Now, the Antonia Fortress was a military barracks built directly against the northern wall of the Temple Mount.
So they were right on top of things.
Roman soldiers were literally stationed on the walls, looking down into the temple courts, watching the crowds for any sign of a riot.
Okay, if the Romans are literally staring down into the temple courts, I'm amazed the chief priests could even breathe without the Roman prefect, Pilate, knowing.
It was incredibly tense.
How did they actually manage to pull off an arrest under that kind of intense surveillance?
They had to execute a flawless pincer movement. The chief priests and scribes needed religious legitimacy with the Jewish crowds, but they also needed street-level intelligence to make the arrest happen quietly.
Away from the crowd.
Exactly. If they trigger a public disturbance in the middle of the festival, the Roman military intervenes immediately with brutal, lethal force.
And then what happens to the priests?
If that happens, the Jewish council might lose whatever limited political and religious autonomy Rome had granted them.
So they are walking a razor's edge, one wrong move, and Rome strips them of their power. This totally explains the intense paranoia of the moment.
It really does.
Which brings me to the preparations for the Passover meal itself. Jesus tells two of his disciples to go into the city to secure an upper room, and he gives them a secret signal.
Right.
He tells them to look for a man carrying a water jar and follow him. Honestly, in a city overflowing with hundreds of thousands of pilgrims, looking for one guy with a water jar sounds like a terrible secret signal. How would they ever spot him in that chaos?
To us, today, it sounds impossible. But in first-century Judean culture, carrying water was strictly women's work.
Really?
Yes, it was an entrenched gender norm. So a man walking through the crowded streets of Jerusalem carrying a water jug would stick out like a sore thumb to anyone who knew exactly what to look for.
Oh. It's a blazing neon sign. It's literally a classic spy movie dead drop.
That analogy captures the tension perfectly. It is a highly secure, prearranged rendezvous point, orchestrated because the environment is so intensely hostile.
Because he knows they're coming.
Jesus is acutely aware that he is being hunted. The upper room provides a momentary controlled secrecy, but that careful control shatters once they leave the city walls.
Right, so they finish the meal and they move out to the Mount of Olives, and this is where the promised betrayal finally materializes.
Yeah.
They go to a place called Gethsemane, which is an olive grove at the foot of the mount. And this scene gives us perhaps the most unguarded, raw moment in the entire narrative.
It does.
Yeah.
We see Jesus separate himself from the larger group, taking only his inner circle and then going even further alone to pray in deep anguish.
And he says something specific, right?
In Mark 14.36, he uses the word Abba.
Which is incredibly intimate.
Yes, it is the intimate Aramaic family address for a father. It's a moment of profound human vulnerability. He is actively asking if this impending suffering can be removed from him.
And meanwhile, his friends are sleeping.
That's the heartbreaking contrast.
Yeah.
While he is experiencing this agonizing clarity about what is coming, his most trusted inner circle, the disciples who just loudly swore their unwavering loyalty to him, are asleep. They cannot even stay awake with him.
And into that quiet, heavy darkness, Judas finally arrives. But he doesn't come alone. He brings an armed crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he identifies Jesus in the dark is so chilling. He uses a kiss. He takes a traditional greeting of deep respect and affection and twists it into a tactical targeting mechanism so the armed men know exactly who to grab in the shadows.
It's a brutal betrayal.
And then Jesus is arrested, and he is immediately hauled off before the Sanhedrin, the high Jewish council.
Now, when we talk about the Sanhedrin and this nighttime trial, we have to navigate the historical record with a lot of care.
Okay, why is that?
Well, the sources indicate that the Sanhedrin was a council composed of chief priests, elders, and scribes. But if you dig into the history, you'll often see the exact size cited as 71 members.
Right, that's a number I've heard.
It's important to specify that this specific number of 71 is historically debated.
Wait, why is it debated? I mean, if they were the ruling council, wouldn't we have strict records of their head count?
You would think so, but that number comes from much later Mishnaic codification, specifically the tractate Sanhedrin.
Okay, and the Mishnah is?
The Mishnah is the written collection of Jewish oral traditions, but it was compiled generations after these events.
Ah, I see. So we can't just project later written rules backward and assume they applied perfectly down to the exact seat count on this specific night.
Exactly. The same historical caution applies to the procedural rules of the trial. Later Mishnaic law strictly forbade nighttime capital trials, and it required a very specific, stringent alignment of two witnesses for conviction.
Why were those rules so strict in the first place?
To protect the accused and prevent hasty, state-sponsored murder, the burden of proof in capital cases was intentionally massive.
Got it.
So when historians look at the chaotic nature of this trial, conducted in the middle of the night, with witnesses actively contradicting each other, it is often viewed as a massive violation of Jewish law.
Because they're breaking all their own rules.
Well, scholars caution that those strict Mishnaic rules should be viewed as probable standard practice for the first century, not necessarily as absolute codified laws that were rigidly enforced at the exact time of Jesus.
That makes sense. But even if the laws weren't fully codified, the haste and the confusion point to a council that is panicking.
Oh, they're definitely panicking.
They know their window of opportunity to get this done before the sun comes up and before the city wakes up is incredibly narrow.
They are bringing in false witnesses, but their testimonies don't agree. They were struggling to make any charge stick. So what finally works? What is the specific accusation that elevates this from a minor religious dispute into a capital case?
The turning point in the trial comes with the accusation that Jesus threatened to destroy the temple.
Let's stop right there and look at that, because to a modern listener, threatening a temple sounds like a purely religious insult.
Right, like speaking ill of a church.
Exactly. But in first century Judea, threatening the temple wasn't just a religious insult. It was like threatening Wall Street, the Federal Reserve, and the Vatican all at once.
That is the perfect way to contextualize it. We cannot overstate the economic and political gravity of the temple. It was the absolute economic engine of Judea.
It's huge.
It was the center of all currency exchange. It housed a massive localized commerce system for purchasing unblemished animals for sacrifice. It was the primary source of employment and wealth for the entire priestly class. It basically functioned as a national treasury. So if someone threatens to destroy it, they aren't just critiquing a theology, they are threatening the entire public order.
Yes, and by extension, A threat to the public order and the local economy is a direct threat to Roman tax revenue.
And there's the Roman connection again.
Exactly. This is why the high priest, Caiaphas, is walking a terrifying political tightrope.
Right, because Caiaphas doesn't just answer to God, he answers to Rome.
Entirely. Caiaphas served at the pleasure of the Roman authorities. He owed his powerful position to the Roman prefect's goodwill. But simultaneously, he needed to maintain enough credibility with the Jewish population so that they would actually obey his rulings and keep the peace.
So he's trapped.
If a rogue teacher from Galilee is gathering massive crowds and threatening the temple system, Caiaphas cannot ignore it without looking incredibly weak to Rome and negligent to his own establishment.
So the religious elites are upstairs in the high priest's courtyard, frantically trying to pin this explosive, treasonous charge on him.
Right.
The witnesses are a mess. They can't get their story straight. The whole thing is stalling out. And while this frantic, highly political trial is happening upstairs, the ultimate emotional collapse of the narrative is happening simultaneously downstairs.
The structural irony of this chapter is brilliant, and it is just devastating. Upstairs, the trial has hit a wall. Caiaphas finally steps forward, abandoning the chaotic witnesses, and demands a direct answer.
He just goes right for it.
He asks Jesus if he is the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One. And in Mark 14.62, Jesus gives his answer. He says, I am.
Wow.
He openly claims messianic identity, and he prophesies that they will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power.
It is the only place in the entire account where he so openly, directly claims that identity, and he chooses to do it right in front of the exact men who have the power to execute him for it.
Facing execution, completely stripped of his followers and his freedom, Jesus speaks his boldest, most dangerous truth.
But downstairs.
But downstairs, warming himself by a fire, we find Peter. Peter, who just hours earlier loudly swore that even if everyone else fell away, he would die with Jesus.
And he is completely undone. But what gets me is who undoes him.
Yeah.
He isn't broken by a brutal Roman centurion. He isn't interrogated by an armed guard with a sword to his throat. He is undone by a servant girl.
A maid. Someone who has absolutely no institutional power, no authority to arrest him, and nothing at stake.
She just notices him.
She simply recognizes his Galilean accent, notices him by the fire, and associates him with Jesus.
Yeah.
Peter absolutely panics.
It's devastating. We see in Mark 14.72, he denies knowing Jesus for the third time, actually cursing and swearing to distance himself. And then the rooster crows for the second time. Peter suddenly remembers the exact warning Jesus gave him at the dinner table. And the text simply says, when he thought about that, he wept.
It's such a powerful moment.
It brings all of this soaring, high-stakes political drama, the temple economics, the Roman threat, the covert operations, crashing down to the most deeply personal, universally relatable level.
Yeah.
It's just raw human failure. The sheer terror of being caught, the primal instinct to survive, and the crushing weight of realizing you've betrayed the person you swore to protect.
It strips away all the mythic veneer we often put on these historical figures. You have the ultimate contrast. Jesus standing firm against the entire religious and political establishment, while his fiercest advocate breaks under the casual questioning of a bystander by a fire.
It's an image that just stays with you. And before we go, I really want to hear from you, our listener. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts on the intense historical drama we covered today. I mean, did understanding the Roman surveillance, the massive Passover crowds, and the temple economics change how you view this covert arrest? Let us know what stood out to you. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the show so you don't miss our future explorations. Also, definitely check the description below for exclusive links to our sources and further reading on first century Judea. We love digging into this with you.
And you will absolutely want to be here for the next one.
Oh, for sure.
Because based strictly on the historical text, the fallout of this chaotic nighttime trial is about to hit the cold reality of Roman daylight in chapter 15.
Right, they have to deal with Rome now.
The religious leaders have their conviction, but they do not have the authority to execute it. They need Rome.
That brings us to the Roman governor, Pilate, and the introduction of a man named Barabbas.
And Barabbas is a fascinating figure. He is. Now, Barabbas isn't just a lone murderer, as he's often portrayed in popular media. The text explicitly describes him as someone involved in a recent insurrection.
Which changes the entire dynamic of the trial before Pilate.
It does. How does a violent, politically motivated insurrectionist fit into Rome's ultimate decision about Jesus? We'll find out next time. But all I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over until then.
Let's hear it.
The religious establishment went to extraordinary lengths to arrest Jesus quietly because they were terrified of triggering a riot that would bring down the wrath of Rome.
Right.
Yet when they finally hand Jesus over to Pilate, the Roman governor offers to release an actual documented insurrectionist who had already participated in a violent uprising.
Wait.
If Rome's ultimate driving priority in Jerusalem was simply to crush rebellion and maintain order, why would Pilate even entertain releasing a proven threat to the empire in exchange for a nonviolent religious teacher?
That is a huge paradox.
What does that paradox reveal about the true nature of Roman power? We'll explore that next time.